In today's discussion, we'll be taking a look at the 4 basic levels of preparedness, as well as some suggestions for items you may need in order to help your transition through those levels with some sense of comfort and ease, while keeping in mind that no disaster is either comfortable or easy in the long run. And while we're on the subject, remember that you being well-trained and well-rounded is a much better prep than anything that you could buy or own. But back to our theme. These points are very important because it's crucial to understand that no one can help or protect your loved ones better than you can. Historically speaking, the masses are far from ready for even a minor event, and the government is terrible at managing a disaster, and both of these elements together make for a very dangerous concoction. Bottom line, the more self-reliant you are, the less you have to deal with frightened, desperate people and overbearing, authoritarian government-sanctioned action. Now keep in mind, this is not an exhaustive list. It is only some basic suggestions and information. Everyone's situation is different, and ultimately, you must make modifications that suit you and your family best. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Level 1. We'll call this moderate. This represents your minor type situation that lasts anywhere from a few hours to a couple of weeks. A severe storm or other natural event is a good example in this category, as well as a general power or other utility failure. As with most disaster situations, the average person will be completely caught off guard and will require the help of the authorities. However, their priorities will go to utilities, hospitals, EMS, and police services, which will be quickly overwhelmed by the mass of helpless, useless people. The average person will barely have 3 days' worth of food in their home and no medical supplies, and will therefore be severely disadvantaged. You, on the other hand, as a prepper, should be able to coast through for the next 2 weeks, as 2 weeks of survival goods should be the absolute bare minimum of supplies on hand. And just to be sure, here is a small list of suggestions for maintaining those 2 weeks off the grid. I would recommend having at least one fully stocked first aid kit in the house. Additionally, if you have medication requirements, it's a good idea to have at least a month's supply put away in rotation. And I am aware that this can be difficult nowadays with tight modern regulations. A good rotated stock of easily to prepare foods. It's important also to have a good rotated stock of easy to prepare foods, preferably foods that don't need to be cooked. MRE type foods would work well here, although I recommend a well-stocked pantry for food rotation. You should also consider having a good stock of sanitary supplies, such as toilet paper, wipes, and other hygiene products. I would also strongly recommend a heat source. If you have a fireplace, make sure you have a stock of wood in rotation. If not, it may be a good idea to keep a kerosene heater and some fuel stocked away. An emergency kit should include at least an emergency weather radio to help keep you informed, and lastly, a good supply of water. Unfortunately, people just don't realize how much water they use on a daily basis until the tap is shut off. Level 2. We'll call this one medium. This is looking at a situation that may last from 2 weeks to a month or more in length. A severe hurricane, earthquake, or flood that cuts a region off from regular supplies would be a good example of this. In addition to the problems mentioned in the first level, there may be an increase in injury and illness, as well as quickly dwindling supplies of food, water, and fuel resources that will put further strain on emergency response. To be prepared for this, I would recommend having twice the food, water, and first aid supplies mentioned previously. Additionally, a gas cooker, fireplace cooker, or Dutch oven that can be used over a campfire would be helpful as you move away from the emergency food and into pantry food. Since it's unrealistic for most people to have months worth of stored water, at this stage you should consider having a plan for gathering water from nature, such as rainwater collection or harvesting from a natural resource. And be sure to have the equipment and supplies necessary for purifying that water. At this stage, sanitation will become more of an issue. Be sure to have a plan in place for maintaining your hygiene, as well as a proper setup for toileting and the disposal of trash well away from your home. If possible, a generator would also prove very useful in this scenario. And let's not forget home protection. You should consider ways of defending your property and loved ones, as more and more of the common folk will become increasingly desperate. Remember, desperate people will do almost anything. Level 3, and we'll call this major. Now we're in the 1 to 4 month category. This situation could have been brought on by some of the same disaster scenarios discussed previously, but the situation is much more severe. And as you guessed, help is very slow in coming, if it's coming at all. This is the level that no one expects, and when it comes, you don't know if or when it will end. This is where government intervention may be very heavy, and you will likely see FEMA and the National Guard on a regular basis in public locations, whether or not you choose to avoid them or keep up appearances so as not to draw attention to your stockpile, as well as take opportunities to perhaps even replenish some supplies, is entirely up to you, and should be examined on a case-by-case basis depending upon how well you trust that situation. To be ready here, in addition to the items previously mentioned, which I would also recommend redoubling if possible, I would step up my communication by including a ham radio as well as walkie-talkies for the family. Sanitation will become an ever-increasing challenge, and again, I will remind you that you must keep latrine and trash disposal at least 100 yards from any dwelling to be safe. If it feels safe to do so, try to network with like-minded neighbors for safety reasons. Survivors from the previous levels who did so by being ruthless will be even more dangerous now. This also, by the way, is the level where barter and trade may be useful, such as vice items and minor supplies you won't be using could be traded for personal needs and wants. And lastly, level 4. We'll call this After the Fall. 4 months to eternity. This is the extreme level that many people dread, but still many try to be ready for. This can be anything from the complete economic collapse of a government to the aftermath of war, including the possibility of nuclear fallout. And as this is life-changing, it requires much more than what was previously discussed. Hopefully, you have a small garden and a seed bank tucked away to help replenish it after a possible failure. Your gardening habits may need to include medicinal herbs, since pharmaceuticals may be out of the question at this point. Also, you may need to consider digging a well or building a small aqueduct so you no longer need to tote water from its source. Security will be a major issue, and ammo may no longer be available, and your stockpile won't last forever. You should consider alternative, more primitive styles of weaponry. Essentially, you could become Grizzly Adams at this stage. Additionally, the inner cities and even surrounding suburbs may be death traps, and the only option could be to bug out permanently. Hopefully that is a scenario that you're prepared for. In short, this is a category that could go on and on, since we are talking complete lifestyle changes being necessary for survival. So I hope you found this segment interesting. If you have anything further to add, feel free to make your suggestions in the comments section down below. They could be helpful to other viewers. They could be helpful to me. You never know. Please do give the video a thumbs up. Easiest way to show your appreciation. Share the video if you can, and subscribe if you are new. If you would like to help the channel out, there are links for that down below. Every little bit helps, and I sure do appreciate it. And if that's it, then what more can I say but stay frosty, folks, and thanks for watching.